You are listening to the Gritty Podcast, where we talk about all things gritty. All right. Is Dyneema worth it? Well, we're going to talk about that here in a minute. Welcome to the Gritty Podcast. I'm Brian Call. I've got Brad Hunt here with me, and Peaks just released a new TP, a new version of the TP. They got the Peaks Solitude TP that we've been using for a while, sort of helped create. And Peaks launched a Dyneema version, which we've been asking for 2 years.
And testing for 2 years.
The truth is, we were able to get a prototype version built for us. So myself, Lampers, we each got a Dyneema tent a couple years ago.
Yep.
Dyneema, and we tested it, ran through the paces, and for sure, I mean, loved it, right? We had a few tweaks in here and there to fix, but really, it's simply the Dyneema version of the TP. It's virtually identical, but there are some things about sewing and using the Dyneema material. It's a lot different than using sil nylon.
Right.
They both have different performance characteristics as well. Now, the something to talk about is, it's funny. There's a limited run. They launched it. Peaks sold the TP. The TP was sold out in like a few hours.
Yep.
And it was a big batch, but they're all gone. Well, and I mean, they sold out, and it was not cheap. It was like a $1,200 purchase for the TP. I think, how much does the Solitude sil nylon version cost, Brad?
I think with the floor and stuff, you're like in the $645 range, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So half.
Yep.
I mean, it's half the cost
and we
go with the sil nylon versus the Dyneema.
And we've always said that on tarps, whatever it may be, half the weight for double the price. And, and that's where people are like, they're worth it or not worth it.
But there's more, the weight is a nice perk.
Yeah.
The reason I prefer Dyneema has less to do with weight than it does the performance of the material.
Especially,
my wife just used the Dyneema and the sil nylon with the Nest on her 50-mile trip in Yellowstone. And it was a 5-day trip, 50 miles. She came back. She said, "Why does anybody use sil nylon? Yep. I hated that tent. I love the Dyneema. The Dyneema is so much better. This, that, the blah, blah. This is Dyneema, la, la, la." Okay. She's hardly ever backpacked much at all. And her novice right there is just like, oh, Dyneema crushed it. Okay. Now, I told her, well, because that is $1,200 and this is $600, and they basically do the same thing.
Yeah. Yep.
Other than the perks that come with the change in fabric. And that made her think twice. Like, well, gosh, that's a lot. And I got, and every time I post to social media, I typically get quite a few hate comments. That's the nature of social media.
Yep.
I don't know. I probably got like 12 or so comments. 10 of them were, "Hey, a-hole, why is it $1,200? What an effing joke."
Yep.
$1,200? Are you effing kidding me? That was pretty much the gist of all the posts. So, and look, it's super expensive.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say
so it's a side-by-side.
And
so is a pickup. So is the other toys that you want.
The thing that people don't realize is Dyneema fabric is hard to come by.
Yep.
It's hard to work with. It ends up passing on to the consumer an expensive price tag. Hey, if you like our show and you want to support us, you can head over to Canvas Cutter. They sell these awesome bed rolls that we've been using for years. You can just throw these suckers out on the ground, camp in them. You see I got my sleeping bag inside. Can't recommend them enough. They also have duffel bags, some of the best you've seen canvas duffel bags. They've got beanbag chairs as well. They call them the dirt bag. They got wall tents. Head on over there, use the code GRITTY, Check it out. Cannot recommend the bedrolls enough. Let's get back to the show. Because the price of getting it is made and created and all that is high. And that's one of the reasons, if you look over at Seek Outside, I don't know if you could check now, but last I checked, they hadn't had Dyneema in a long time.
Yeah. Yeah.
They just weren't available if you wanted one. Gone. Because the fabric, I think Dyneema, by the way, got sold. Cuban fiber got, I don't remember, I don't know, but there's some issues in getting material.
Yep.
I wish the fabric was much more readily available. I wish it didn't cost so much. And we're dealing with a market right now and an economy where everything is more expensive now.
Absolutely.
Everything you manufacture costs more than it used to. Gasoline is more than it used to be. What did they say? The average price of living for your average person is $2,100 a month? Or was it?
Dude, it's ridiculous. That's all I know.
Like before the Biden presidency, I think they said you're looking at $1,500 to $2,000 more a month to have the same living that you did before.
I don't know if Seek Outside is selling a Dyneema.
I don't think they are.
Nope. They are not.
So that was one of my things. I left a comment and said, show me the super uber reasonably priced Dyneema teepee that is out on the market right now, instead of the Peaks version. Show me that. I don't think there is.
No.
I don't think anybody's making them. I think Seek did for a while and they quit.
Right.
And there's a reason they quit, because people said, why is this so effing expensive?
It's true.
But I'll say this, we sold out in 3 hours. So the market says there's demand. The market says there are people out there who will spend $1,200 for the teepee that want it.
Yep.
These guys who just said, are you effing joking? They're not those guys. And that's just the world we live in. You know, if you were to ask me, there are things that people buy all the time. I would never buy that. I would never spend that kind of money for that thing.
Yeah, right.
Because I don't value that thing at that price. I don't. And there are things, though, that I would buy. Ultimately, the market will tell us whether that teepee is worth manufacturing and producing.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's why I think they spoke to us in the sellout of the teepee in record time.
Yep. So
it tells me there's a market. And so if I were to go by the response I got on social media, I would think we shouldn't make this. This isn't a good product. Nobody wants this. It's too expensive. Yep. The cost of Dyneema is too high. The consumer's not, the value of the Dyneema isn't worth it to the consumer.
For sure.
They just buy the sill. Let's just let it go. At some point, that's the math that occurs. There could be the best teepee ever. But if it costs you $3,000-$4,000, you're like, nah, I'll just deal with the $600 version.
Exactly. And again, it comes down to, I think, a life choice. So like for me, for Dyneema, I would rather pay the high price for that material because of my experiences that I have in the backcountry and how I've kind of structured my life. I don't care or desire to go boating that much. Yeah. Now, side by side, snowmobile, sure. Those are things that I've saved to buy in the past. Mm-hmm. Those are the extracurricular activities that I enjoy to do. I like backpacking. I like hunting. I like to be comfortable. I don't like to have to mess with my material. I'm a buy once, cry once guy.
Yeah. You know what, though? That's because you're at a stage in life where you also have the finances to do that.
It's true.
Would you have done that when you were 18?
Hell no. I mean,
you just make do with your Walmart tent. That's what you do.
Before I started with Gritty and stuff, I mean, I look at even 10 years ago. Yeah. It took me like every year I would just buy a little piece of kit to upgrade it.
It's like when a guy says, I would never buy that, Brian. That's like fresh out of college and has no money.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, well, when you're a little richer, well, duh, you'll buy it. Like I get it.
That is a good, smart life choice not to buy it.
Yeah.
You know, like, when you
everybody is at a different stage. People don't want to hear that, though.
Yeah.
People don't want to hear, like, we'll get wealthier.
Yep.
They don't want to hear that.
Mm-hmm.
The truth is, the standard of living that I live at now and the gear I have and all of that came at this stage of my life. I'm turning 50. I didn't have that gear when I was 20.
Yeah. Right.
So, and I may do just fine. When you said, well, I'll pay for the Dyneema, I wouldn't when I was younger. Ben and I would never buy. I'd be like, you know what? I'm tough and this works just fine.
Right.
I don't need that crap.
Yep.
I don't need the money spent there. I have other places I'd rather spend it, like this new snowboard. So everybody has their, their thresholds and their value systems. But, the market says, at least from what I've seen so far, there's a hunger for Dyneema shelters. Now, Hyperlight makes a Dyneema teepee. They don't make it stove compatible.
Yep.
So that's a big difference, because why have a floorless shelter in the form of a teepee
exactly
if you're not going to make it wood stove compatible?
Yeah.
Like, okay, no thanks. First of all, I'm not okay with not having a wood stove ever anymore.
No.
I just don't. It baffles my mind that all these people don't hot tent camp on their backcountry hunts, especially after September.
Yep.
You get in October, November, December, there ain't no way I'm leaving
a no-brainer
wood stove.
Even in areas you don't think that you're going to be able to use it, take the dang thing, because
we find a way.
You find a way.
So I think there is nobody else making them that I'm aware of. Maybe people in the comments can throw in that's making a teepee in Dyneema at the moment. And the market wants it. And I'll tell you why I think the market wants it. One is there's enough of us backpacker junkie guys that go on foot out there, and we want the weight to be half.
Yeah.
Right? I want my teepee to weigh, instead of like 3 pounds, I want it to weigh 1.5 pounds.
Yeah. And when, some of you might not think that is worth it, but when I'm packing 10 days of stuff and plus us with camera gear, I'm starting out at 75 pounds for a 10-day hunt before water. Like, every ounce and all the weight, it matters to me. I would love to have my pack down to less than 60 pounds.
Well, especially anytime I get the same exact performance, but at half the weight. Both teepees do the same job.
Right.
But so you're going to carry it anyway.
Yep.
To do the one job.
Yep.
But it's half the weight.
Yeah.
It's like, well.
And again, the small things that increase the performance of the Dyneema versus the Sil Nylon, then that really adds a higher benefit to it, because it still does the same thing as the Sil Nylon, but it makes the experience back there, the stretching.
That's what I'm trying to get at. I'm trying to get at this point. Okay.
Yeah.
It weighs half as much.
Yep.
Okay. That's great. But more than that, the teepee performs better.
Way better.
Just like my wife said, I should bring her on the podcast. Just as a complete novice, she got so annoyed with the Sil Nylon. So annoyed. Because the Sil Nylon stretches in a way that Dyneema doesn't.
Yep.
You stake it down once with Dyneema, it's done.
Set it and forget it.
The Sil, it moves on you. And then when it gets hotter, colder, you have to readjust the stakes.
Yeah,
or it sags.
You'll come back, like if you set your Sil Nylon teepee up and the temperature fluctuates a whole bunch, like there are times you can come back and that teepee's still set up and your center pole is like, a big old bow and ready to snap, because it's stretching so much.
You also come back to a really cold, wet tent, kick on your wood stove, and now it shrinks as it gets hot,
right, and
puts pressure on the pole. With Dyneema, once you set it, it stays there.
It doesn't move. Yep.
So there's an advantage there. It's really nice. It stays taut. So with Sil, you just have to, there's extra steps. You just have to, and that's the case with every Sil Nylon shelter. Now there's different types of Sil Nylon.
Yeah.
The stuff that we're using at Peaks, it's a combination of lightweight and performance.
Yes.
It's a great tent. I'm not saying it's not. It's just, it's Sil Nylon is just a different material than Dyneema.
Right.
And I'll take Dyneema all day, every day. The other thing about the Dyneema, and this is big for us, the shelter, let's say it gets rained on.
Yes.
It's cold and wet outside. It gets rained on. And we're going to throw that thing in the bag and run up a mountain 3 miles away to get after a bear or a mule deer. We gotta roll up that tent while it's wet. Well, sil nylon, it's almost like a sponge, the way that it collects water. And you get it there and you try to roll it up, and it seems to weigh twice as much as it did before, because it's got all this kind of water content that you're squeezing out and trying to get off, but it just stays on the fabric. Whereas with Dyneema, the water, it's like a windshield. It's like with like some water repellent.
It almost just like wicks it away.
You just sort of shake it, and the water comes off. It still has water on it, of course, but it's nowhere near it doesn't hold.
It's not saturated like sil nylon can get.
It doesn't hold the water weight that sil does.
Yep.
So you can get it real squeezed out, most of the water off of it. It's pleasant to roll up, just fold up and put it inside of your stuff sack or whatever, and then move on. Sil isn't like that.
Nope.
So that's another big thing. When it gets wet, it's just so much better to use. And then when it's up and it doesn't sag, so it just performs better in the wind. It performs better when there's a heavy storm.
Mm-hmm.
You know, my wife was like, man, it would sag and then it would catch more wind instead of let that wind just kind of slide over it.
Right.
And then it would create like a sail kind of effect and whip more. And she's not very experienced pitching it. And so I'm sure it wasn't taught often.
Yeah.
She didn't have the pole high enough. I'm sure there were some issues.
Cross checkers in there or something.
Yeah, with her setup. But it just goes to show that the sil nylon was not as forgiving as the Dyneema, as she just was so frustrated.
Here's the other thing I've noticed in my experience with the Dyneema versus the sil nylon. If you get like a hole, say a spark lands on the sil nylon or the Dyneema, and you have a little pinhole, that sil nylon, when it rains, the water will come through and drip through that sil nylon.
Yep.
Even if you have a little bigger hole in the Dyneema, it's like it just runs right over it.
Yeah, the sil tends to leak more in various ways.
Yep.
Suzanne mentioned that too. She's like, you can have a pretty poor setup, but there's nothing porous with Dyneema.
Yep.
If you have a really wet tent and you just keep rubbing it on the sil, water will come through.
It's like it soaks through eventually.
The pressure will allow water to come through the pores, and water will get in. Not a lot, but it's still bleeding through. Old sil used to be even worse.
Yeah, right.
Modern sil nylon is just a little bit better. Remember back in the 90s, it was like, don't touch the tent, because as soon as you touched it, then water just start dripping through it.
Yeah.
So you wanted to keep your hands off the tent wall. But that is the case that is not like Dyneema. You can rub your head and your body against it and no water will ever bleed through it.
Right.
You might have some condensation or something like that, but you won't actually have water bleeding through it like you do with sil.
Yep.
So it's just a better fabric, but it costs a lot. But I think, you're talking about an addition. It's like buying 2 teepees for one. It's expensive, but I will say, at the stage of life I'm in and how much I spend in the backcountry, it's worth it.
Exactly.
I don't know when Peaks is going to have another batch. They may not I don't know. We still have to talk to Bryce and see, but there's definitely a demand. But getting our hands on the fabric has been very tricky.
Yep.
Because you have to buy it in a huge giant chunk. And then you got to cut it all up. And you want to maximize the use of it.
Yep.
I don't know if there's some other products being made out of Dyneema to stretch all the scraps.
Heard from Bryce was there were going to be some bags and certain things like that.
Because I really like Z-Pac's products. Yep. I like their pillow, their backcountry pillow. I would love to redesign a bunch of it. I feel like it's close, but it didn't hit the mark, just like most of the stuff out there that I see. But they got that was a great TV. I'm glad it sold out. I was a lot of people are annoyed that they don't know when another batch is coming. I can't help you there.
Yeah.
But I think if you sign up for the Peaks newsletter and stuff, you can
You'll be the first to know.
You can get notified when that happens, and then in the email probably before everybody else, and you could jump on it before they sell out. Lately, it seems like Peaks is selling out of, like, the inventory won't stay in stock.
Yeah.
And some of that is just because of manufacturing limitations. Companies that are growing like Peaks, without some massive cash investor who wants to own the company and then change it, turn it into a North Face, which is not the goal here. You're restricted by the capital you have to work with, and that's where it's at.
But also, on the other end of that is, when you come to market with a good product, it speaks for itself and it will sell itself.
Yeah,
So
yeah. That's the Dyneema Sil Nylon.
The next step, hopefully, is you saw the origami come out not that long ago. It's great. We want it in Dyneema now.
Yeah, for those who don't know what we're talking about, Peaks came out with a sweet,
awesome shelter.
It's a tarp. It's called the origami. It's a flat tarp, which we love. We use flat tarps. We've been using them. We promote them all the time. We've used some made by Seek. We've used some by Z-Packs.
Light Outdoors.
Sitka has a flat tarp. So there's a number of flat tarps out there. I've had a Z-Packs tarp for a decade. It's got enough duct tape to make it weigh as much as Sil Nylon now. Actually, no, it's still pretty dang light.
Yeah.
It's like 8 ounces, something like that. And it's big. So, the Peaks, though, one of the issues with our flat tarps is we would love for it to be more conducive to becoming a shelter that you can use as a tent. So one of the things with a flat tarp is it's hard to shape into a shelter that blocks the wind,
close it off,
coming sideways at you in a storm.
Yep.
So I don't know, man. Jason and Bryce, they came up with a freaking genius idea, which they've called the origami.
Yep.
And that flat tarp basically folds into a A-frame tent. Yeah. And it's taut, low, spacious, keeps the wind and the rain out. It's a legit shelter.
Absolutely. Especially because it doesn't have a stove jack.
There's no door. You just like crawl under, but it's slightly angled.
You
but
can set it up in, I think it's 6 different variations. And so you can kind of close it off to where it has a door, but it's not a door all the way to the ground, but it will close off and not allow that wind to come in, not allow the water as it's blowing in. It's like a vestibule on the end of each side of the tarp. So it protects your gear, doesn't blow in. You can open it up as a full-on huge flat tarp with your trekking poles. And so it's a great, especially early season,
it's just extremely
shelter.
It's extremely versatile.
Yep.
We do a lot of hunts that are straight up, straight down, like steep hillsides.
It's hard to pitch a teepee on.
The teepee stuff is a pain in the butt on that stuff.
Yep.
And if you're in there in summer, spring, fall, and you don't need the stove, Mark and I bombed out, remember, after a couple bears, upon which he missed when we shot at them. And but it was awesome. We were backpacked in there, though, and just throwing up a flat tarp on a steep hill on a deer bed.
Yeah.
It's so easy to just duck out of the rain real quick in a storm. But then the origami converts into a shelter, and you can just kick out that deer bed. It was a pain in the butt to try to set up a more traditional tent. Mark had a teepee, and he had a tarp, and he just threw his tarp up, and he was sleeping like right away, and he could pick almost any spot. Hey everybody, if you like the show and you want to support us, head on over to Mountain Ops. If you're in need of a new merino hoodie, or you want some workout clothes, or you just want a little pick-me-up. I like the Mountain Ops Ignite, especially like the pink lemonade flavor. It's a good one. I recommend that. Head on over to Mountain Ops, use the code GRITTY. You're going to save, and it's going to help us keep bringing you the show. Thanks for tuning in. Now, let's get back to the show. The more structured your shelter is, the more you need it to be level. It's a problem. So, that's kind of the need, warmer weather, steep slopes.
Yep.
Lots of rain.
Especially like a solo backcountry hunter that's running and gunning all the time and it's lightweight. And you don't need a stove. Like, oh man, it is an awesome shelter / tarp /
it's so versatile.
Everything else.
So here's the deal. You carry a tarp anyway.
Yeah.
We do.
Yep.
And you want it to be able to convert into a tent. Now, the problem that we have right now with the origami, the only problem is it just depends on the style of your hunt.
Yeah.
Now, if you're going to carry a tarp, just a tarp, while you also have a teepee somewhere, okay? Because often that's what we do.
Yeah.
We'll leave our tent set up, and then we'll go book out for the day.
And then if we need to, we have the option to stay underneath the tarp.
We bring a tarp with us, for which we, out of a rainstorm or whatever, or some kind of situation, we have a shelter with us while we left our other portable shelter back at base camp, maybe 5 miles back, 3 miles back, whatever it is. Sometimes that tarp never comes out of our bag. Most of the time it doesn't.
But it's always in
always in our bag. So we are like, none of us leave a tarp behind.
Nope.
At this point in our hunting careers, we don't leave tarps behind. Even in hot desert country, we bring the tarps. So we always have a tarp. So that was our method. That was our idea going into this. Hey, we got the Peak Solitude. Great. We got that teepee. We're going to head out for the day. We need a tarp that we can bring with us.
Yep.
That will give us a shelter in a storm that we just carry. But we also want it to be a standalone shelter too, that we could sleep under if we wanted to, and have it be really robust.
Yep. And give you good protection.
So hence the origami. Yep. The problem with the origami, the only issue really at this point, it's brilliant across the board, but it's not Dyneema.
Yeah.
And when you look at the weight of bringing that, it's a little bit higher than what we'd like.
Yeah, on the high side of the weight.
When it's your backup tarp.
Yep.
Now, if it's your solo shelter,
it's perfect.
It's perfect. The only issue there is if you're on a hunt where you load up every day and you move, dude, it's money.
Yes.
It's light. It's quick. It goes anywhere. It's spacious. It acts as an overall shelter. If you're a sheep hunter and it's like, we pick up, we go. We pick up, we go. We pick up, we go. But if you're like, hey, we're going to sit here for 7 days. Well, you don't want to leave your tarp set up as your shelter for 7 days and then leave without your tarp.
Yep.
Because you want your tarp. That's your shelter, right? So that's where a little tiny, Dyneema tarp works really well, or lightweight, even on the super lightweight sill.
Yep.
So right now we're in that in between where that origami, if it was in Dyneema, it would be unstoppable.
Oh man.
Because now you have that lightweight backup shelter. That's a robust shelter, not just like a tarp, but like a tent.
Yep.
Which is ideal. So, but right now it's only in sill.
Yep. But it's still great.
I still would use it, buy it. It's so versatile. And I'm looking for ways to use it as my solo shelter, where I'm not even bringing a teepee or anything else.
Absolutely. And if I'm hunting in August, or even early September, like there's no question that's the teepee, especially if I'm solo. Like that's the shelter that I'm bringing because I don't need a stove.
I don't want a pole. I already bring trekkers.
Yep.
I'm picking up, and we're like when we go on our elk hunt in September.
Yeah.
I would just rather bring the origami. No poles, it's like simple.
Yeah.
We would be able to just run and gun, and we're on such steep hills, throw it up, use it as flat tarp when it's too hot, use it to protect us from the rain, glassing.
Yeah.
But we pick up and we move every day, never leaving a shelter behind.
Right.
And we're not bringing stoves because we're not down with the weight.
No.
So it's a cool setup, man. The second it comes out in a Dyneema,
it's going to be even cooler.
It's an unstoppable shelter.
It is absolutely unstoppable because the variations you can set it up in and the use that it will provide is second to none. Like, holy cow, will that be a game changer, as we always say.
Oh, dude. It's going to be cool.
Yeah.
So one of the things that you could do as well is you have one buddy who carries the teepee, and another one who carries
the origami.
The origami. So you got the teepee and you got the origami between the two of you.
Yep.
And you're talking about, versus like a traditional Dyneema flat tarp that could do the job. You're not quite, I don't know what the weight difference is, but a little under a pound, I think.
Yeah. Yep. Like my Sil nylon tarp, I think it's 9x10. I think something like that. It is 13.5 ounces, I believe. 14. Yeah, it's like 14.5 ounces actually.
So it's a little more weight penalty to have it be able to be as versatile as it is.
Yep.
To convert into like a true, you're talking, 6 ounces or something more.
Yep.
For that option. So you got to weigh it out, but man, I'm excited. I'm excited for us to put it through the paces.
Yep.
On this next trip. And I can see it being, for all those times I don't need a stove.
Stove is exactly.
It's pretty sweet.
Yep. Sets up so many different variations, and you can fit 2 guys underneath of it.
It's big.
So to sleep in, like you can fit a lot more under that sitting underneath of it, but to sleep in, you can fit 2 guys underneath there if you have to. Pretty easy.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a pretty sweet setup.
But, man, I'm in love with Dyneema.
Me too. Me too.
Sorry, just am. It's the way to go, if at all possible. You can tell, like, we're like Sil nylon. We're like, oh man, we're a little spoiled there.
Yes, absolutely. I know. The Dyneema is just, obviously we talked about it's lighter, but the pros versus the cons to Sil and Dyneema, just the Dyneema crushes any Sil nylon. But like the Peaks Sil nylon teepee is not a bad way to go.
There are people that are quite familiar with Sil nylon shelters and teepees.
Yep.
And so they've done it so long, they don't even know.
Right.
They set up the teepee so they can quickly pull the strings to tighten it. They have all these things that they've done. Mm-hmm. That they're like, why would I pay more? I've mastered this piece of material, this tent. And I think that's totally valid. Having the luxury of having Dyneema and using it as much as we have, whenever I have to go to a Sil nylon, I feel like
I'm going back in time.
I feel like I'm like being demoted.
It's true. But the Dyneema is just, especially in wet.
It's kind of silly because the Sil does a great job.
Does a wonderful job. But then I'm like, in wet, especially super wet hunts, I'm like, oh, the Dyneema is so much nicer.
Nice. We use it in Canada, and
that was a wet
on that trip. It's so wet. And I was glad we weren't rocking the Sil on that trip.
Yeah, me too. Absolutely.
All right. Well, I hope you found that discussion useful.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sorry if Dyneema is a bit on the spendy side. I didn't do it. It's just what it is.
Yeah.
But hopefully for those that find the value there, it's there for you down the road. So season's upon us.
It is. And Peaks has something else coming out real soon.
Do they?
Yes, sir. In a few days.
Really? Okay. Well, yeah. We're going to talk a little bit more. It's that time of year, but yeah. Thanks for tuning in. We'll catch you on the next episode. Stay gritty.